An older guy once said to me, which made a lot of sense: the darkest part of the night is right before dawn. And that really stuck with me. And it also relates to what we're about to experience here in the U.S. after they implement this mass deportation. And because of so many people being deported, we are about to experience chaos. People in the street marching, uprising, and most of it gonna be staged. That's why they're asking kids to come to school, because the cameras will be there. But it will look very bad when you see immigration officers swooping in, arresting kids from school, and when you see elderly folks being arrested and the cameras are there, people will be angry. But on the other hand, let me make this clear. I'm an African American, but I love all people. I don't care if you Mexican, white, black, Arab, Chinese, whatever nationality. I look at all people the same. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. We all bleed. And I believe God created man and He created woman, and we're all connected in a way. So let me make one thing clear: I am not prejudiced. I'm prejudiced, and I do not hate. I believe in loving all people, but I think that we are dealing with something that is great for the citizen of the United States, especially African Americans and small business owners. Now, this mass deportation seems to be a bad thing to most people nowadays, based on how the media spins it. But let me tell you a story, the reason, and let you know the reason why I disagree, and I agree with the mass deportation. Simply because I experienced and seen the results of allowing so many people come into the country and take on jobs that minority do for a very cheap price, which causes other companies, minority companies, to lose bids. But guess what? The client always gonna go for the lowest bid. And if you got 5 or 6 people staying in the same house, you can afford to charge a cheap price, especially you just enter the country, you're undocumented, making more money than you ever made. So of course, yeah, you would, just to get your feet wet, charge a cheaper price. And it makes sense. And what client wouldn't want a deal? Because we all look for deals. But when you look at the bigger picture, it hurts minority business owners. And let me tell you a story how it affected my family. Now, my father was a small business owner. He's now deceased. He started out as a brick mason, working for a company you may know, African American. He was a big time contractor here in Atlanta, Georgia. Herman Russell. I think his name Herman Russell, something like that. But anyway, he owned apartment complexes and he owned a construction company. He was a brick mason. And brick mason was one of the biggest, the most paid trade, most lucrative trade as a middle class person. Now in the ancient days, a brick mason was equivalent to a doctor. But in the modern days, back in the 90s and early 80s, minority subcontractors or business owners, as far as masons, were some of the highest paid middle class workers here in Georgia without having a degree. And back then, it was mostly black contractors and white contractors. But then in the 80s, Ronald Reagan allowed millions of Mexicans enter the United States, and they did not deport them. And slowly but surely, my father started complaining about being underbidded on projects. Back then, to lay bricks, I think it was like $325 to $400 per thousand bricks laid. And then you had the Mexican come over here, and they were charging $200 per thousand. So they would win the contract because they couldn't beat that $200 per thousand because they couldn't meet the payroll. They were paying their employees lesser because they were undocumented workers, and they were trying to, get their feet wet and build a clientele, and it made perfect sense. And most of the time, they were staying. It was 15 to 10 to a house where they were splitting all the bills. And the great thing about it, they all get along. Unlike us black people, we can't even stay with our own family members. But one thing I can say about, not one, it's a lot of great things I can say. But one of the great things that I can say about Mexicans, they look out for one another. They work hard. They do great work. And they see you're a great guy, they will feed you. They'll look out for you. And but the only thing that I have a problem with the ones that I encounter here in Georgia as business owners, they will only hire their own kind. And I have a problem with that because as a contractor myself, I will hire anybody. I don't care what race you are. It's all about your skills and your attitude. But as far as race, it doesn't matter. And then once they get paid, where do they send their money? Back home to Mexico. So we lose on both ends. Our contractors are slowly being phased out. Our African American minority contractors, and then our economy, local economy, is losing thousands that minority contractors used to put back in the local economy. So we lose on both ends. And like I said, as time went on, first Reagan allowed so many millions in, then over the next 10 years, it got worse. First, the Mexicans was working with white contractors, then they became contractors. Then they got government, then they were able to get government contracts. Then they start working more than the minority contractors. And it has got to the point where most of the minority brick mason contractors were phased out here in Georgia. And also in the lawn care service, the same thing. And then I look back on the fact that why is it that out of all other immigrants, the Chinese, the Jamaicans, the Arabs, the Africans, who else? And the other immigrants that wants to be a United States citizen, they come over here and overstay their visa. The immigration come in and swoop them up, and deport them. But when it comes to a Mexican that overstay their visa, and they can get arrested, instead of being deported, they are released back onto the streets. And also, I look at that as a business owner. When trying to get anything, I have to have all my documents: license, business license, social security card, bank statements. I mean, everything. And they're gonna verify that all my documents are valid. But as an undocumented Mexican immigrant, they're able to get apartments, cars, houses, have a business, get public assistance, and then get to send their money back to their native country. And the fact that they're the only immigrants that are allowed to do that, I see it as favoritism. And not only I see it as favoritism, if you're going to allow a Mexican immigrant to come over here and overstay their visa, then every other immigrant from any other country should be allowed to do the same thing, if it's going to be that way. I believe in fairness. If you're right, I'm with you. If it's wrong, then I'm going to speak up. And like I said, I seen the destruction from undocumented workers coming over here unlawfully. Just like Richard Pryor said years ago, the new ninjas are coming in town, and they're going to replace you. And that's what I seen happening. Minority business owner being replaced. If United States citizens is persecuted for violating the law, and we talking about a federal law. If we break a federal law, we will be prosecuted and may end up in the pen. But it's just not right for anyone, yet alone a non-citizen, to break a federal law and nothing happens. is not only unfair to United States citizens, but it's unfair to any other immigrants from any other country. It's not about hating someone. It's not about trying to hurt someone, because if you break the law, we all know there's consequences. If we go to another country unlawfully and breach their borders and not go in the right way, if we get caught, we can't be surprised if they deport us. So how can you argue if you're wrong? So I stand on the side of righteousness. Undocumented Mexicans coming over here illegally and in the act violate a federal law. It's just flat out wrong. It shouldn't be condoned. Please subscribe, hit that like button. See you soon.